hockey is 10 years behind the NBA and the NFL in marketing. And I just think that right now hockey is on the outside looking in of sports that are culturally relevant, and I don't think that they're doing things to bring it back into that fold.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to My Social Life. This is the podcast where you can hear the real stories behind the people on social media. I'm your host, Jacob Kelly. As always, today's podcast is powered by TRUFAN. And before we get into today's conversation with JT Barnett, there's a couple things that we need to go over first. Number one, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please consider leaving us a positive rating and review. The more positive ratings and reviews you get, the more it helps new people find the show and really helps to grow the community that we're developing here. And if you're one of those people that have recently found the podcast, welcome. I'm very excited to have you here. Make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for future episodes. I put up brand new interviews every single Monday, and a brand new takeaways episode is an audio exclusive where I sit down and break down the most recent podcast episode of the week every single Thursday. Last but not least, if you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to share it to your Instagram story, tag myself at the Jacob Kelly and tag JT at JT Barnett, and I'll feature you on my account and send you a message as well. And now, without further ado, let's get to my conversation with JT Barnett. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to My Social Life. This is the podcast where you can hear the real stories behind the people on social media. I'm your host, Jacob Kelly. As always, today's podcast is powered by TRUFAN. And today on the podcast, we are joined by JT Barnett. JT is a retired professional ice hockey player who has since gone on to co-found Reset, a healthy lifestyle company throwing events centered around wellness and recovery, the founder of Deke, a hockey media company for the modern age, and he is also the co-founder of The Honey House, TikTok's most popular millennial creator house with over 1.1 million followers. I'm very excited to have you on the podcast today. JT, welcome to the show.
What's up, bro? Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
My pleasure, man. I'm excited too. And where I want to start today, I actually want to go all the way back to the beginning. So from my understanding, you started skating at 2 years old, right?
That is correct.
And I'm
Very,
assuming,
very young.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that part of the reason for that is because your dad was a professional ice hockey player as well, right? Playing the WHA.
Yes, correct. So my dad was the WHA back in the day was similar to the NHL. They were equal, but they had not merged. Eventually, they ended up merging and formed the NHL. My dad played in the WHA, got injured, took a puck to the eye, retired, became an agent, and worked in hockey and up to this day. And so that's why I was always super into it.
Mm-hmm. And is it true? Did he play in the first interleague game between the NHL and the WHA?
Damn, I don't know. Did you hear that somewhere? I gotta
Yeah.
ask him that.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I took these notes a long time ago, so I can't honestly tell you where I found it. But if I have it written in here, it's because I found it somewhere.
That's an interesting stat. That's an interesting stat. I gotta ask him because I know that it was right around that time. My dad played on a team with Gordie Howe, who was legendary hockey player. He played on the team where Gordie Howe was able to play with his sons, which is like has never happened. Um, and so there was definitely some historical moments. I'm not sure if they were the team that played the first game against NHL, but I'm gonna ask him.
100%. And so you said eventually he ended up retiring. He went on, and I want to ask specifically because he went on to revolutionize hockey marketing with all the work he did with Wayne Gretzky. Can you kind of talk to me about the impact that had on you growing up in terms of just marketing yourself as a professional athlete?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually didn't look at Wayne or any of the other players that we were around as like these superstars. They were like, "Oh, that's Wayne. Oh, that's Yaromir." It's like these guys that are over at our house or that I'm around that were just like family friends to me as a kid. I think definitely growing up now and doing what I'm doing, a lot of my dad's skill set has been passed on to me, which is I'm super grateful for. And I look at things, uh, I piece things together similarly to the way that he did it. But I don't know if I actually was aware of how much those players being around played a role on me as a kid.
So it was more so not necessarily the marketing side, but more so just like the hockey side was the impact that those guys
Yes.
were having on you growing up.
Yeah, like that's why those being around those guys is 100% the reason why I wanted to be a hockey player. Like they were, seeing those guys play, seeing those guys train, seeing those guys have fun with each other off the ice. Like we would have, I remember specifically when we lived in Lake Arrowhead for a little bit, we had a guest house, and in the summer, my dad would have players he represented come and stay at our house. And we had one summer 6 guys that were in the NHL All Star game 4 years later when they were younger, staying at our house. Um, and me just like playing street hockey and stuff with them every day was is a vivid memory in me in my as a child, my childhood, that for sure made me want to pursue what they were doing and have a passion for it. And so, to answer your question, the marketing side maybe not as much, but the player side 1000%.
Mhm. And I do want to talk about the player side briefly before we get into the marketing side. So, from my understanding, you got drafted by the Giants at 14, right?
Correct.
What was your understanding of the WHL at that point in time?
Zero, like pretty much zero. I spent my life in Palm Springs, Los Angeles, and Scottsdale, Arizona. All three places super warm. And majority of my life was Palm Springs in Arizona. So I'm desert kid, pool outside, hot temperature all the time. It was weird for me to be playing hockey, but I was so ingrained in it because my dad. Um, but around the age of like 12, 13 is when it starts to get a little bit more serious. Kids start to take hockey to different levels, stop playing other sports as much, really try to like dedicate yourself. I was there. I really wanted to dedicate myself. I was doing things on and off the ice during the summers. I was going hard into it, but I didn't really know what leagues were in Canada. I knew my brother had gone up and played. It had to go up and play junior B in Vancouver, but I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna go play in the WHL. Oh, I'm gonna get drafted to a team in the Dub. Like the day of the draft, I got drafted late. I got drafted in the 10th round, but the day of the draft, um, I was in Colorado for a regional hockey tournament, but for USA Hockey, they have like select camps, and I was there, and I remember hearing like a couple of guys that I knew got drafted in the first 4 rounds, and it was like, oh, that's cool. And then I remember my dad coming up to me like 4 or 5 hours later in the day and being like, hey, just want to let you know you just got drafted to the Vancouver Giants in the 10th round, and I was like, what? Like, are you serious? And uh, and then I ended up winning, going up and making the team and playing.
So, what was the ultimate like decision point between you playing in the Dub versus going the NCAA route? Because like you can only stay like 48 hours before you lose eligibility.
Yeah, so for me, it was I was young in my high school. So when I got drafted, I was a freshman, and most people when they get drafted, they're a sophomore. And so for a lot of the players, when they get drafted, the question is, do I go to major junior, to the WHL or OHL or one of those leagues, and lose my eligibility, but I'm gonna be, or do I wait just another 2 years and then go play college? And it really only is, 2 more years of staying at home and doing this. For me, I was a freshman, so I was like, I'm gonna have to play at least 3 more years here before I can go to play college, or I can leave right now and go play 3 years of major junior and have the chance to be drafted as a 17, 18-year-old in the NHL. And so I think it was a timing thing for me. It was like a mix of that plus at that time, ma- the WHL and major junior as a whole was a lot farther ahead than college was. There was a lot more draft picks coming out of major junior than there was of college. A lot more people signing out of major junior than there was of college, and the equality between the two wasn't really there. It was major junior was regarded higher for especially for people in the NHL. For college, for Americans, college was still big, but for people that worked in the league, major junior was regarded a little bit higher. So that mixed with timing was what played into it for me, and ultimately it just came down to us needing to make a choice, and we decided to go with WHL.
Mhm. And talk to me briefly about your time in the WHL. Like from my understanding, like you battled injuries kind of throughout your whole 5 years there, and you ended up because you're projected top four, but then had injuries that didn't go in the draft, right? NHL draft, not WHL.
Yeah, dude, you've done your research. This is great. I played in Vancouver for a 16-year-old, 17-year-old. My 16-year-old year, I literally didn't score a goal until the last 4 or 5 games of the season. My 16-year-old year was so hard, so challenging. I was on one of the best teams in the entire WHL. They had won the Memorial Cup the year before. They were all of the guys on my team were all getting drafted. Evander Kane, Brendan Gallagher, like big guys. And my coach was Don Hay, who was like a notoriously infamous coach for being very successful and also very challenging on his players. And I'm coming from Scottsdale, like innocent, good vibes, summertime. Like, I was so different than the framework of that team of like really gritty and really like hard nosed and like, that just wasn't really my vibe. And so going up there was the adjustment for me as a 16-year-old, 15-year-old starting off was really hard. So my 16-year-old year was just a lot of me getting used to that, not playing a ton, being in and out of games, just kind of learning the ropes. My 17-year-old year changed a lot. I came back, I started scoring immediately, I started fighting, just a lot of things changed. And for the first uh, half of the year, I really kind of lit it up. I had like a really good first half of the season. I was going into the draft radar. I was going into, or I was on the draft radar. I was projected to get drafted in the first couple of rounds. Uh, and then going home for Christmas, I think just like kind of reset that of me being like, oh, I really miss being home and I miss the vibes of Arizona. And, I'm living in an hour outside of Vancouver in a little town of like 50,000 people, and I don't have friends out there. So I think that going home for Christmas kind of reset things for me, and not in a good way for hockey, more in just like a I miss my family way. And so my second half of the year was not good. Like I went back, I didn't score nearly as much. I didn't play at the level that I did at the beginning, and I didn't end up getting drafted. I ended up getting camp offers and going to camps and stuff, but I didn't end up getting drafted.
And so you kind of, and then from Vancouver, you went to, was it Kamloops, then Kelowna?
So I went from Vancouver to Kamloops. Yes, played in Kamloops for 2 years, and what? So it was Vancouver for 2 years, Kamloops for 2 years. Halfway through my 19-year-old year, I went from towards the end of the season from Kamloops to Everett to finish the year in Everett, and then was going to start the year in Everett. We started the year with five 20-year-olds, and so I got moved to Kelowna, and that's where I finished my career. Was in Kelowna.
And you got hurt at the beginning of your away year, right? Like you missed a lot of the beginning of that season.
My overage year.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kelowna was by far and away the best year for me. It was just like I think on that same note of me missing family and like not really enjoying the lifestyle that I was living in Vancouver. I almost went full opposite in Kamloops, where I was like, I love my team, I love my lifestyle, I love everything about this group, that I didn't care about hockey as much because I was having so much fun, or I cared about it, but I was just having like so much fun with hockey or with the group that uh, my my attention on the ice wasn't as much as I want to hang with the guys off the ice. Then I think I balanced it out a little bit when I was in Everett, and then when I was in Kelowna. And so Kelowna for me was like a good mixture of really, really loving the group of guys and also really taking my own work seriously. And unfortunately, yeah, and I started amazing. Like I in preseason had a hat trick my first game in Kelowna, and then my first game of the season, actual season, we were playing in Kamloops and against one of my old teams, and I was so fired up, like so fired up. I started the game or national anthem sold out. I'm like, this is the team I used to play against. I know every guy on this team. So fired up, and then like I think it was my second or third shift. I went to go run somebody, like hit somebody, and it just kind of they were skating along the boards, and I had to turn into the hit. And when I turned, my knee just kind of my MCL just kind of snapped awkwardly. My knee got stuck. It was in a weird position. My MCL snapped, so I ended up tearing my MCL. Didn't have to get surgery, which was good, but was out for like a handful of the first bit of the season, and then came back and ended up playing the rest of the season. But um, yeah, it was tough for that to happen.
Yeah, I was going to ask because I know you came back from that last injury. You tucked to your first game back, and then talk about like the rest of that season. What's your mentality? Because like it's your OA year, so you're trying to get signed out of that after that season, right? So just like, what's your mentality going into it? Like, is this like you thinking this is the last shot you have to try and prove yourself to go pro, or like what's going through your mind?
Um, I don't know if I was really like, this is my last shot to go pro. I think that I felt like because I had gone to the camps, the NHL camps, and done good. Like I in New Jersey, I played a preseason game and scored in preseason, and then I think like after that and seeing that level, I knew that if that when I was done with my 20-year-old year, I was going to get a chance to go play somewhere. So I don't think I was like too concerned of is this going to be the last thing ever. But I really did want to leave on a good note and have like a really good, solid overage year. I think like by the time that I got back from that injury, different roles on our teams had been set, and the role that I came in and played was be a leader, do the most that you can offensively, be solid defensively, nurture these younger guys on our team. Like I always was playing with I played with Nick Merkley, who was 15. I played with Rourke Chartier, who was 16. I played with a lot of younger guys and just like helped them learn the ropes of the game, help them feel comfortable doing their thing, and then chipped in offensively where I could. I finished that year feeling really good about. I mean, at that point in my career, I was like, look, it doesn't. I'm not like a 80, 90 point guy right now. So how can I feel good about what I'm doing? And in the locker room was somewhere that I really like wanted to take charge with the guys, keeping the vibes good with the group, making sure everybody's working hard, enjoying their time. So that was something that I really felt good about. And at that same time, that Kelowna team that I was on, we were incredible. Like we broke the record for home wins in a row. I think we had 27 or 28 consecutive wins at home in a row, which at that time was the record. We broke the record, and it was just a really, really, really fun group. It was my favorite coach that I played for, Ryan Huska, who's now the assistant coach of the Flames. That group has about 6 or 7 different guys right now that are in the NHL on it, and it was just a really, really positive experience to finish the career.
I mean, ultimately, you did sign. And for the sake of time, I just have one question about the coast. And it's, can you kind of explain to me the thought process behind the flow and mustache combo you had going on there for a while?
uh, Dude, I don't know. I think I've always been like very artsy, and I think in the times where like I go through more emotional times, I think I tend to be even more artsy, and so I'm not sure exactly where that started. Where I was like, I'm gonna literally look like Johnny Depp for the next 6 months of my career. But I went through like a one to 2 year where I was literally rocking a must. I can't grow a full beard, but I can grow a sick mustache and a little bit of a goatee. So I was rocking that for about 6 to 12 months throughout that year.
And then so from the coast, then after a few years there, you end up going to Russia because your dad used to manage, or Sergei Fedorov was one of his clients, right? And so he ended up calling your dad, and that's how you went over there. My question to you is, how good of a song is Russian Paradise?
Dude, it's an amazing song. Amazing song. These are great questions. Russian Paradise is a rap song that, for nobody that knows what it is, Russian Paradise is a rap song that is sung in English by a Russian rapper. And when I got over to Russia and was playing music for guys on my team and playing music in the locker room and stuff, they asked me if I had heard Russian Paradise, and they put it on. And from that moment on, it was like an inside joke between all of us, because the song itself is an inside joke between Russians of just like how Russian Paradise is not nearly the same as American Paradise, and just that inside joke with the team lasted the whole year. I still listen to that song and just like crack up listening to thinking about like the time singing it with those guys.
And my other question about Russia is to talk about the food combinations that they have there. They eat some weird stuff in Russia, eh?
Yeah, dude. So for the people that don't know my Russian experience, I played for Red Army, which is the Russian military team, and I played on both their KHL team and on their VHL team, which is like or which is like their AHL team in Russia. And the AHL team there, their team called Chekhov, was 2.5 hours outside of Moscow in a town of probably 50,000 people. And we lived in a dorm room with, and I literally lived in a dorm, aka hotel room, with 2 other Russian players that barely spoke English on twin mattresses, with like a 11-inch TV as our TV in the room, and you eat 3 meals a day in the cafeteria, and that's your life. And so the meals that we would, to answer your question, some of the combos that I saw there were things that I would have never seen before. The first day that I was there, we wake up, they have things that are like pancakes. They look like a pancake, and guys are putting ketchup on it, pouring ketchup all over the pancakes. I was like, "What are you guys doing?" And they're like, "This is it's the best." So every day that I ate something there was comical, and I had a good following on my Snapchat of seeing people seeing what the different combinations of food were being served as.
Speaking of food, this is kind of a niche question, but is grilled cheese still the sweatpants of sandwiches?
You've done your research, bro. This is great. I would still say grilled cheese is a sweatpants of sandwiches. It's simple. You can do it in minimal to no time. It doesn't need to look good. It just gets the job done.
Mhm. No, I have found some little things. I was like, I wanted to include them in here, but we'll jump back to
Awesome.
some more serious stuff. Around the time, so your last season was in France. I think you went to Sweden for a minute, and then you went to France for your last season, and that's where you really started to experiment with growing your personal brand, right?
That is correct.
And so, like, what led to you starting to do that? Because, like, in a hockey culture, like, that's not necessarily like a priority. Like, for context, I worked for the Ottawa 67s for a couple of years. And so it's just like, that is just not part of the thought process. It's like, I always say that, especially in junior hockey, also, but in the NHL as well, but in junior hockey, there's 4 times a year you post: beginning of season, Christmas. The only variable is how many playoff rounds you play, because there's a post per playoff round, and then usually a photo at the lake at the cottage in the summer. And that's pretty much it. So, like, what led to you starting to want to grow your personal brand while still playing?
That's a great way to do. I need to like write down those different posts that are like the standard starter pack for hockey players' Instagrams. Um, Dude, honestly, the more that I think about it and look back at my career, the more I'm like, I actually think that hockey was my side hustle, and I really think that my creative endeavors were what I was passionate about. I mean, if you ask any player that I played with, that knew me in the locker room and outside of the locker room, I was always doing different things. I was always coming in with different outfits. I was always coming in with knowing different artists, working on different things on social media, posting different stuff on Instagram. That was what I really enjoyed. That was really what my passion was. And so I think right around the time that Instagram started to have people that were gaining followings, because before that there was Twitter, which people would had followings on there, but you didn't really see people. You just read their thoughts. Once you could like visually see people on Instagram, and I was seeing that people were building followings, I was like, I want to do this. I want to connect with other people. I want people to see what I'm doing, and so I started posting a lot on Instagram. Right around the time that I was in Everett in the WHL was when Instagram was starting to pop, was starting to get like culturally relevant, and I was spending every second outside of being on the ice on Instagram. I was doing different little growth hacks. I was doing follow people, unfollow them. I was doing like direct message as many people as I can, comment on every photo that I see. Like I was just trying to do little things to just try and build my following. I didn't even know that that's what I was doing. I literally was just like, I'm gonna just try and do this. But uh, that was really what sparked me taking notice into social platforms, and from there it just snowballed everywhere. France, when I was in France, was decided to do a podcast, and then retiring was when I started to like really take it seriously.
And so, even despite like you saying how hockey was kind of your side hustle, and I even know like when you played junior, like you were making music a ton, and you also, I know your dad wanted you to be an actor. Despite having all these different side hustle, or hockey being your side hustle while you worked on all these other things, did you still feel like you lost part of like a big part of your identity when you retired, despite having all these other interests? Like, was retiring still something
Totally.
that was difficult for you?
Dude, retiring was extremely difficult for me, not in the sense of even just like leaving, not playing anymore, more in the sense of like, oh, now I need to like really take all of this other stuff seriously, which is the stuff that I love, but which is the stuff that has been taught to me is not uh, the stuff that will get me success. Like I mean, every coach in every old school coach, when you're a hockey player, is going to tell you just be a hockey player. Don't do music producing. Don't do art. Don't do social media. And so that I had that ingrained in me that like all of this other extracurricular stuff was bad, and that was the stuff that I was super passionate about. So being done with hockey and going into that stuff, I had to like really work on being pumped about it for just for my own wanting to be pumped about it. Just like this is what I care about. I don't care what the that coach cared about. I don't care about what that person cared about. This is what makes me feel pumped. And that was one thing that I worked on, had to work on a lot, and still do at times. And at the same time, another thing that was really challenging for me was you go on a when you're on a team, you're used to being around 30 people every single day. And whether or not you're like super close with your teammates, just the fact that like by proximity you're around that many people, you just feel very supported. You feel very like I'm in this with guys. Whatever I'm going through, I got a group around me. And me coming from a big family and then being around teams all my life, retiring and moving to LA and moving in with my girlfriend, and it just being around my girlfriend consistently and not being like I'm showing up to a rink and being around 30 people for was really tough. It was like something that I needed. I went to therapy. I worked on stuff on my own time. I just had to start building my own community here, like just a lot of different like little pieces. But it was challenging, and it was something that I still work on to this day.
Mhm. And when you came back initially, like the first thing you really dove into was like kind of the personal training thing, right? And was that because of maybe it's a combination thing, but was that just because of your background as a professional athlete, or is that because like I know your mom's a personal trainer too, right? So it's like was it her and like from just growing up with her being a PT, like that led to you being one, or was it your background in hockey? Was it a combination of two? What led to you doing that first?
So my mom being a personal trainer is absolutely 100% what has made me be super into wellness. That mixed with me being born with also the interest of working on myself and getting myself to be the best that I can, uh, is really what has made me want to pursue wellness in everything that I do. But outside of that, knowing that I was a content creator when I was playing and wanted to do that more, and also really enjoying the actual training aspect, like that was probably one of my favorite parts of playing was I loved the practices. I loved the workouts. I didn't like the actual grueling part of the workouts and the practices, but I loved the camaraderie of we're hanging out, we're working on something that's going to make us look and feel better, and we're going through it together, and we know that this is going to improve our well being. And so that was something that I loved. At the same time of me retiring, fitness and wellness as a whole was starting to take off as like an actual niche that people could make money in and that people were watching. People weren't watching each other's workouts 8 years ago, 9 years ago when I was playing. At the time that I retired, it was starting to happen. I noticed that, and my girlfriend was doing it full time, was posting workouts and yoga and different types of eating tutorials and tips. And when I retired, I was like, I want to jump into that. I know that I can film my workouts. I know that I can personal train people. I know that I can do little like stick handling videos that will go viral or will get a lot of traffic on them. And that's what I wanted to do.
And then talk to me how that then snowballs and becomes reset.
So we were working with a ton of brands. So my first year out of retirement, I started going really hard into posting content. I probably went from like 15,000 followers to like 40,000 in that year. And we were working with a lot of brands, both me and my girlfriend, and loving them, like really enjoying some of the brands that we worked with. We were using them every day. We were implementing them into our daily routine. And we also had friends in LA that were really not into wellness at all. Like really we're still in the nightlife phase or we're still in the college phase and just were like having a great time, but weren't taking care of themselves holistically. And so we were like, how can we get some of these brands into the hands of our friends without us having to like really sell it to them because we hate when people are like pushing things on us and like you need to try this. Da, 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 da. So we're like, how can we do this where it's super organic? And the first thing that came to mind was we got to do a party, but we also if this is like a wellness thing, we don't want there to be like everybody coming and getting drunk and then feeling hungover because that's the opposite of what we're trying to value. So what if we do like we throw a party, but we have no actual alcohol be there, but we do have like a DJ and we do have everybody vibing together and it be like loud, like there is a party atmosphere, but everything is recovery. So you're getting massages, you're getting IVs, you're drinking healthy drinks, you're having healthy food, you're getting any sort of like recovery thing was incorporated into it. And we launched it. And so that was the idea, the initial idea. And we are like, cool, when would people need this? And immediately we were like, the day after Coachella. Everybody is dead the day after Coachella. And everybody still wants that like atmosphere of like community and togetherness and stuff. You don't want to just when you're especially when you're feeling hungover on that Monday or feeling down on that Monday, you want to be around people still. But everybody ends up just going and laying in bed for 2 days. So we're like, let's actually start a party, an event where everything is recovery, so people will actually feel better when they leave but it's on a Monday so they can come right there after Coachella, and that's what we ended up doing for Reset.
And with Reset specifically, you co-founded it with your girlfriend. So talk to me about the dynamics of living with, dating, and having a business, and with your girlfriend, living with your girlfriend, dating your girlfriend, and her also being your business partner.
Yeah, you have to communicate. You have to really work on articulating and communicating everything that is coming up for you, everything that you're feeling, everything that's you're thinking, everything that you would like to talk about. You have to really feel good with communicating, because there's obviously added elements even just living together. But when you go into a business together and you both have different strengths, different weaknesses, different things that you look at, different ways you look at things, you have to really communicate and be willing to flex, to be flexible. You have to communicate and be willing to be wrong at times. And so I think that's one thing that me and her do really well with each other is we over communicate on everything, and that gets us through things that other people might not be able to get through, when they don't talk about them or when they don't feel good with what's coming up for them.
And so ultimately, when you guys decided to start Reset, neither of you really had a ton of experience in like the event or the festival space. So talk to me about how, despite that, you still went forward with the idea and then how it all ended up coming together.
Honestly, I think when we had the idea, we were like, "This is a really good idea." We know that because we have been in the place of the influencer who is done with Coachella and is now going back home, making that drive from Palm Springs to Los Angeles, just feeling miserable and knows that the next 2 days they're just gonna be laying in bed. We also knew that on the brand side, all of these brands that we had been working with have been having such a hard time getting in touch with influencers and finding people that would represent their brand and finding people they could do campaigns with and finding people that would give them actual feedback in real time on their products. And so we knew that on both ends, this was a win win for both parties. And so once we had that recognition, we were like, we have to do this. Like, we got to go for it. The first person we talked to, one of our friends, who's an event producer. We came up with this idea in February. Coachella is in April, so we had about 2.5 months or 2 months to pull this whole thing off. We came to our friend who was an event producer and said, "This is what we want to do. We want around 25 brands there. We want around 50 people there. Uh, do you think we could do this?" And she said, "Absolutely not." She's like, "This takes a year to plan. You guys need 6 to 12 months to plan this. You guys need to do this and this and this." And we left the meeting. We were like, I just feel like we still need to do it. And so we just dedicated all of our time to it. We were like, we're going to go really hard at it. We're going to ask people questions. We're going to just try and put feelers out. And we ended up pulling it off.
And so, like from a business perspective, how are you guys making money? Is it like the brands coming in and they're paying for a table at the party, and then all the influencers get in free, and that's what attracts the
Correct.
brands?
Yeah. So influencers are free with the understanding that their ticket is them posting photos and videos from the event. And the brands pay to be at the event to work with the influencers, meet the influencers, and get shouted out on their Instagrams or whatever platform.
Yeah. And did you do one or two events before COVID hit?
We did two. So we did it the day after Coachella, and then we did it again the day after Labor Day, which we didn't know until the actual day of the event that it was also the day after Burning Man had ended. So it ended up being after a festival as well. But we did Coachella and then we did Labor Day.
Okay. And so, how did you guys pivot then once COVID hit? Did you just kind of pause the business? Is there other stuff going
Pause.
on with pause entirely?
Yeah, so COVID hit and we were like, let's just actually put this on pause. We thought that COVID was going to be like 3 months. We were like, maybe we could still do Labor Day. Maybe we could still do like later on in the year. So let's just put this on pause right now. And that was what we ended up doing. And then once that happened, Sam started going really hard into her even harder into her personal brand. And then that like really exploded. And then at the same time, I started doing Triple Deke and I started doing Honey House. And so right now, Reset is just kind of on pause.
Got you. And so I do want to talk about Triple Deke and Honey House. Let's start with Triple Deke. From my understanding, that started with like you started working with other hockey pages and eventually you just kind of took one over and rebranded it, right? Like that was kind of the beginning of Triple Deke. And talk to me about like the aim of Triple Deke. Like from my understanding, you started it because you felt like hockey specifically is doing a bad job marketing to Gen Z, right?
Yeah, so I started Triple Deke because I was consulting on a couple of different hockey brands already, helping them with just this is what you should include in your content. This is a new thing that you should start out. You should try and do this on your stories. And I was really enjoying doing that. And I also at the same time recognized that I had more time on my schedule because we had to pause reset because of COVID. And so getting off one of those calls, I just was thinking to myself, I actually might be able to do this myself, but I can't run the day to day because I don't have time to actually do all of the posting. So if I could partner with somebody that wanted to do all of the posting and like stay active with clips that are going on in the league, then I could oversee and come up with all the ideas, do all of the collaborations, do all of the new stuff, and then we could continue just like getting media out there with the other person that I partnered with. So I went around to probably 30 or 40 different Instagram pages that are popular and sent them a DM saying, "Hey, do you have any interest in partnering? Do you have any interest in me coming and just like consulting on the page, but allowing me to rebrand it? Or do you have any interest in selling this whole page outright?" And I ended up finding somebody that wanted a mix of a couple things. He wanted to be part of it. He wanted to stay on board. He wanted to do the posting, but he also didn't want to own the whole thing. So I was able to get in there, rebrand it, start injecting my own content, start collaborating with players with the understanding of hockey is 10 years behind the NBA and the NFL in marketing. Hockey is they don't market their players, they market teams. They don't create content they don't put enough attention into new audiences and new demographics that are Gen Z or younger or are in non-traditional markets, so diverse cultures. And I just think that right now hockey is on the outside looking in of sports that are culturally relevant, and I don't think that they're doing things to bring it back into that fold. And rather than me on my personal page just talk about that and just like put that out there, I was like, I want to take action and create something that actually changes that for the sport and does the things that I feel aren't being done right now. And so that's what I want to do with it. I want to we work with all Gen Z, so all younger players, 25 and below, and we document what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So get them to show like what's their day of their life look like, what kind of brands are they using, what clothing are they into, what music are they into, and in my opinion, it gives the fans more of a personality to relate to, which therefore gets fans to care more about the game, which therefore gets them to buy more tickets, buy more jerseys, which then helps the league as a whole. I don't think the league does an amazing job of doing that. And so, in my own personal opinion, I want to do that so that I can not just complain without taking action.
And how did we get here? Because I think it was on Spit and Chicklets a couple months ago. They did an interview and someone was talking about, I think it was a Sports Illustrated cover from '94, where they're talking about how NHL is more popular than the NBA, or it's more like fans enjoy more than the NBA, to now where a rerun of the sitcom Young Sheldon got more viewers than the Stanley Cup final
God, dude, that's so bad. Dude, honestly, I wish that it's something that I would like to spend more time in, and honestly, if there was articles or books or anything I could read that could show how it got to where it is right now, versus the NBA, I would really enjoy doing that. And even like what you were just saying, the article of 1994, that's something that I would be really fascinated into reading. I just know that here's where we are right now. Here's where the NBA is right now. And I know that the NBA before was in where the NHL is right now. So I don't know exactly what has happened over the little bit of the NHL. I do know just from brief conversations with my dad and telling him my opinion, I just know that the NHL is a very they hold on to a very high level the heritage and the past ways of being in the sport, and there's a bit of not being open to changing those traditions in the light of what's going on in the world today or where we're at with the next generations. And I think that that's something that they should be a little bit more open to. And I'm sure that they're having those conversations simultaneously as me doing this. But I think that the NHL just could do a better job of marketing as a whole.
Mhm. No, 100%. I completely agree. And what does like your big picture long term vision for Triple Deke look like? Because right now I know it's Instagram. You guys have a TikTok as well, but like if you could like blue sky, what's the big picture for it?
I want to work with players. So I think right now we're kind of a brand. So we're going to be like We're going to do some products, some apparel, have people wear our stuff, have people represent our brand. But I really think that there's a conversation down the road for us to actually represent these players themselves and build their brands. It's a conversation that I'm already having with agencies right now of helping them with their players' branding. But I think that there is a potential for us, once we've developed these relationships strong enough with the players, to just outright represent some of these guys and get them to be brands, but also get them to brand themselves, but also get them to help them with their on ice game as well.
Mhm. Oh, that's awesome. And so like how often right now are guys reaching out to you? And like I will say too that like with the day in the life thing, I think that's awesome. Like I think that's brilliant. I love that content. And so how often now with that one specifically, like how often are you reaching out to guys trying to get them to do it? Or do you have guys coming inbound now asking to do those takeovers?
It started with just outbound. It started with us just hitting guys up and saying, "Hey, would you want to show like what your life looks like for a day?" Um, Now it's to the point where we're getting a lot of messages from people saying, "Hey, I saw my friend do this. Could I do it?" Or people that have done it being like, "Hey guys, one of my guys on my teams wants to do it." So we're getting a mix of both. We still do outbound. We're still messaging people that we want, but now it's to the point where we've had 85 guys that have done it now, and now it's to the point where we have teams and agencies that are sending us messages saying, "Hey, could I actually get a couple more of my guys that are on my roster coming through here? Could I get some of the players that I represent going through?" So it's going well.
Mhm. And so, what do you think some things the NHL could start doing, like short term, to start turning some of that marketing around? Maybe it like falls on players specifically. Like, whenever I talk about this, I always reference Connor McDavid. If you look at his Instagram last 12, 18 months, 50% of it is like sponsored posts or branded posts. So, like, none of the stuff about him. And I mean, for a guy like that, he's going to be making so much money, it might not make a difference. But, like, where is this tide going to start to turn?
Immediate things that I think the NHL could do in the short term to increase their overall marketing. I think that they could spend a lot more time creating content on platforms that are relevant to audience that they don't have right now. So Gen Z on TikTok, uh, even more on Instagram than just their highlights of what's going on in the league that day. Um, I think that I personally, everything for me comes down to content because my mind goes to where is the attention of everybody that we're trying to get to come to the games, and I think that the NHL has the like 38 to 56-year-old demographic of men locked down. So I don't think where is their attention. I think where is that 37 down to 15 putting their attention, and for me it's platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, and so then I go, how can you create content? How can you get those people to care more about the sport? You have to create content that's contextual to each one of those platforms for that audience that you're trying to reach. And so I really think that every single team could have a videographer for individual players that they follow and do literally what we're doing with Triple D, day in the lives consistently, or different types of content with each player that markets the player to their audience on those social platforms, and also gives the player content that they could redistribute and put on their own pages. So then they're building the player up, which then gets fans to be interested in the player, and then therefore to the team. So that's like something that's very immediate. Hire kids off the street to just go and create content for these players. Dude, so many kids that are listening to this right now would be open to going and following one of their favorite hockey players with a video camera and then creating little clips from it's fun. That's be like a fun thing to do. You get to go, it's a sick lifestyle. It's you're creating content, you're building your own brand as a creator. I don't think that the NHL would need to go and pay these videographers to create content for players. So that's something that I think they could do in a very, very immediate term. I also think right now the NHL is going through a massive uh, contract negotiations for their rights for their broadcasting with MSNBC. That deal being done, I think that there's a big play for them to look at where that audience that they're not getting right now is putting their attention, and that to me is streaming platforms like Amazon Prime or Hulu or Netflix, Facebook, different types of streaming platforms that they could potentially have games be hosted on that might reach an audience that isn't being reached right now. So those are just a couple of things that I think are off the top of my head in the moment. I mean, I I would really love to spend a week with the marketing team in the NHL and hear where they're at and why they haven't done certain things and what they're thinking of doing so that I can give them my input on maybe you guys should try this and try that.
No, I love that. I think that's awesome. But for the sake of time, I do want to jump to TikTok because we're running out of time here. Talk to me about when TikTok first kind of came across your radar, and then eventually how you came up with the idea to start your own creator house.
Yeah, so I was starting my own vlogs, David Dobrik style, wanted to start filming all of my friends and just like things that I was doing during quarantine. I started it like probably 3 weeks before quarantine. And so as you could imagine, when you're in quarantine, you're not being able to film a ton of different people in your vlogs. So I was calling one of my buddies in New York and saying, "Dude, I'm just having the worst time with these vlogs. I have no other cast members in this. I need more people in my vlogs." And he was like joking around saying, "Dude, we need to just get like all of our friends together or a bunch of people in a house that are doing cool things and just film it like Entourage and put it out as an actual show." And I was like, "I love that. Like this sounds like a dream come true to me." And that idea kind of snowballed into us going and having conversations with actual networks and like, how do you film a reality TV show? What do we need? What would make this successful? Literally every one of them was like, "You're going to need a significant amount of drama in the house." And so we were like, "All right, okay, we're not doing a reality show then. Let's actually like try and pivot this and do something that is less drama filled and more good vibes, and we can do it with people that we want to have around." So TikTok at the time was exploding. That same friend that I talked to posted a video of his girlfriend lost at a coffee shop, and it got 25 million views overnight. And his page went from 0 to 110,000 people following him. And so while I'm talking to him about my YouTube vlogs being brutal, he's telling me like, "Bro, have you seen? I posted this one video. I have 120,000 followers overnight." And so what with those two conversations happening, we were like, "All right, let's get some people together, and rather than us film it for YouTube and do a reality show, let's just literally put everything on TikTok." And then we started seeing content houses pop up, Sway House, Hype House, all of these other ones started popping up. And so we were like, "Okay, let's try and like model it after that, but just do it in our own way." That was what we ended up doing with the Honey House.
And talk to me about the reaction because I can remember, like, because you messaged me on Instagram after the Honey House had launched. And so I remember seeing Honey House hit my timeline before I'd ever knew who you were, before we'd ever spoken. And so it got picked up because you guys are like the millennial creator house, whereas all the other ones are typically Gen Z. So talk to me about the reaction from the media when you guys launched.
Yeah, we've done 2 seasons now. Season 1, we did in August, and for the first, like, week and a half, we had 1,000 followers. We were posting, like, everything and anything we could. We were trying different stuff. For 10 days, couldn't get a single person to really, like, care about us, and then we had one video that had, like, 1,000,000, and then it kinda started to trickle in, and by about the middle of week 3 or 4, we were at around 300,000, and people were really engaged in what we were doing, the challenges, the hopscotch, and people were commenting like, "We would love to see more about what you guys do on a day to day." So I was like, "All right, I'm gonna go video what everybody does and just ask each person what they would like to say." And because everybody in the house is working on multiple things, everybody's pretty entrepreneurial, doing some side jobs. I was like, "Tell me what you want me to tell people that you're doing right now." And so we videoed everybody's like almost their side hustle. So some people were like they're a full-time personal trainer, but they're also teaching people meditation. And so I said, "This is a meditation coach," or where people this person's a full-time personal trainer and athlete, but he's also a business coach. So I'm gonna say he's a business coach because that's what he wants me to like market himself as right now. And in the video, if you're just seeing it and you don't know each person, most of the jobs don't seem like they're real jobs. Like I'm like, this person's a mindset and meditation coach. This person's a motivational coach. This person's an e-commerce guru. Like all things that if you're not in Los Angeles, you're like, dude, that is not real. So we posted that video. We went to sleep. We woke up the next day. Immediately, we were getting like a lot of love. It was the first video that we had like big time TikTok creators commenting on. But at the same time, an hour later, we got one of my friends sends me a text saying, "Yo, your video is on Barstool." And then he sends me a link to somebody on Barstool that tweeted like, "This is sincerely the worst thing I've ever seen in my life." And so for the next like 3 days, we had just like a backlash of hate from Barstool people We had a lot of people saying like, "You need to burn this house down." We were getting a lot of just really just awful messages. But at the same time, with those same news outlets that were being really negative, we also were getting some that were super positive. So we were getting like New York Times was talking about us. We were getting like uh, people from GQ reaching out wanting to talk to us. So it was a mix of bad and good, but overall, it really elevated our brand as a whole.
And so now 2 seasons in, over 1,000,000 followers, like, what are some of the biggest lessons you've had from the first 2 seasons of doing this?
Um, the big lessons is know what you're gonna do in the house. Like know what you're gonna for people that are thinking about doing a creator house. Like know what the brand is gonna be, what kind of content you're gonna film, and have like a schedule for doing that. And then number two is make sure that everybody in the house is cohesive and is gonna get along because you're spending so much time with each other that that for us is like always number one. Like everybody's got to be good vibes. Everybody's got to be able to communicate and be like a very healthy adult functioning individual to be in the house because it's you living with people is always tough. Living with people and filming everything and documenting it is another level of just like added weight on you. So just making sure that everything is good vibes and that you know what you're going into it, what you're trying to get out of it, and keeping that open line of communication has been something that we've really held on a high pedestal.
And so are you guys working with brands and stuff with Honey House yet, or is it like, is it making money? It is now?
Yes, so season two, both seasons we've worked with brands. Season two, we brought in a couple of deals that were higher level deals. So we are working with brands. It's going well, and we're planning to work with brands again for season three.
Yeah. Do you have any insight, like season 3? Are you guys gonna be a new house, new city, anything like
Season
that?
house is going to be Miami. That's our plan for it right now. We're still in talks about what that looks like. It's going to probably be end of March, April. But right now it's looking like Miami.
I have an Instagram caption jumping because I know we're running out of time, just jumping a little bit here from September 18th, 2018. I'm going to read it to you, and then I want to kind of get you to kind of talk to me about this caption. It's a little bit
Cool.
long, so bear with me here, but it's
Okay.
September 18th, 2018. Making moves, try new shit. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. No one does. I just try to follow my intuition, my heart, and go for it. With all the fear, the nerves, the uncertainty, all the stuff that could go wrong, forget all of it. You either try and fail and laugh at yourself a bit, or you sit in your comfort zone and look back at yourself or at others with resentment later on. Fuck what other people think. Put yourself out there, do your best. The rest is out of your control. The least we can do is try.
Yep.
Talk to me about that. Like, what led to you writing that?
uh, again, like, dude, on that same note of like being a hockey player who was always into other things and taught that those other things was not conducive to being a hockey player. I have had to overcome that by doing the things that I really believe in and doing them just because I want to do them. And I think that in that, I don't think that that was entirely my own quote. I think that part of that is actually paraphrased from another quote that in a book that I read. But that quote to me is just like nobody knows exactly what they're doing. Everybody is trying things. Everybody is doing their best. So even though you feel fearful about stepping into something new, not feeling confident about it, not feeling entirely sure about it, do it if it's something that you care about and you believe in, because you're going to learn once you go through that process. And doing the work is really how you understand and how you do learn. And so for me, and along with that, do it just because you want to do it. And so for me, that was something that I've had to really work on and still do. And that quote was me saying, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it because I want to do it.
I love it. Before I let you go, I want to ask you the same question I ask everybody at the end of every interview. So pretend you have a crystal ball and you can ask this crystal ball any question. You'll get the 100% honest answer. What is one question you want to know the answer to?
Mm. Dude, there's nothing like really like that's it would honestly probably be something like practical, like what could what could I invest in today? Which one of the things that I'm thinking of investing in would be the right pick? But dude, honestly, even that, like the process of like not getting it right and then figuring it out is actually fun. I don't know. There's really nothing that I would even want to ask it. I like where I'm at. I like what I'm doing, and I don't want anything to be given to me.
Fair enough. I love that. I love that answer still, even though it's not a question. I like that answer. And I will the last quote I have here. I'm just going to read this quote, and then I'm going to get you to plug where people can find you. But I'm
Cool.
excited to see what you've got coming over the next couple of years because, as your caption said on July 5th, 2017, just here to change the world. But I want to thank you.
100%.
I want to thank you for taking time, man. Where can the people find you? Plug anything and everything you got right now.
Everywhere for me is at JT Barnett with two T's, Barnett with two T's. And then Honey House is on Instagram is Honey House TV, and on TikTok is just Honey House. Reset is on pause right now, but that's a reset underscore. And then my Triple Deke on Instagram, would love if you guys follow that if you're hockey players, at Triple Deke, the legendary move. And yeah, please send me a message if you listen to this. Would love to connect.
Awesome. I'll make sure everything's linked in the show notes down below. And I want to thank you once again for taking the time to be on this podcast. And I want to thank everybody for listening, whether you've listened the entire way through or you only listen to bits and pieces. I really appreciate you taking time to check this out. Everyone do me a big favor. Go and follow JT. Go and check out Honey House. I'll make sure everything's linked in the show notes down below so you can find it. If you'd like to follow me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the Jacob Kelly. Feel free to come and say hello. My DMs are always open. If you'd like to follow the podcast, you can find us on Instagram at My Social Life Podcast or YouTube by searching up My Social Life. As always, today's podcast is powered by TRUFAN. Thank you once again for listening, everybody. We'll talk soon.